because I want you to explain Kabbalah and mysticism to the dummies.
All right.
What is Kabbalah? When did it start? How do we get involved in it? And how is it helping our life?
That's a very good question. I think you have to start from all of this. There's no place after the Holocaust. A lot of people will definitely identify with this. The younger generation have tinnitus, or the older generation, that you never spoke to me about feelings. Well, feelings. If they had feelings, they would die.
His therapist told him that he has a God wound.
A person loves yapchik. That should be part of your tradition. You eat yapchik. I never eat yapchik in my life.
Right.
I can't eat yapchik.
Yeah.
I'll never eat it.
Every celebrity went in the Kabbalah centers. They opened it up. Sparks flying. What is that?
You know where you find Moshiach?
Where? Okay, we have here today an esteemed guest. His name is Rabbi Rav Pinson. Rabbi Rav Pinson has wrote a lot of books. What is it?
60.
Around 60.
Yeah.
60 books. He wrote on which subjects? Is it Kabbalah or what is it?
Yiddishkeit, Kabbalah.
Yiddishkeit, Kabbalah, and self-improvement. How to apply life through the lens of Kabbalah. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Of the
a
Kabbalah.
lot of those books. I mean, some of them are more on Yom Tov and on different mitzvahs, but a lot of them are like that as well.
Let's start where, because these words, I'll tell you what it is. The audience and the listeners who are listening to this podcast, well, I know that you're a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and you're a Mechaber Svurim for so many Svurim, and you write about Kabbalah, and you write about mysticism, and you write about all these things. But what I want to do is, for a change, I want to take this Rabbi Pinson and bring you down with the feet on the ground.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
I want to bring you down because I want you to explain Kabbalah and mysticism to the dummies.
All right.
For the dummies. We're the dummies.
All right, there you
go. So here's what I want you to start.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, we start by Avram Avini. This is where the Yiddishkeit, this is everything starts, but you will have a better handle of where to start. But my question is, what is Kabbalah? When did it start? How do we get involved in it? And how is it helping our life to look through the lens of Kabbalah to navigate our life?
Okay, let's start from the last part of the question, which is, I would say that for today, in a 21st century modern Jew, you call them the dummies. Let's just call them the average person.
Right.
Today, the access point to Kabbalah is through Hisbodedus. So you have to understand that. In other words, Kabbalah is a type of spiritual revelation.
And it all started by the Baal Shem Tov?
Well, so the Chassidus started with
right, but you're connecting Kabbalah with Chassidus.
So I want to say like this. I'll say it like this. Yeah. I don't know if you're probably from this age. You remember there used to be floppy disks?
Sure.
Today they don't work anymore, right? Then they got other types of disks, and every day there's like new type of technology. Right. The newest spiritual technology is the revelation of Teres Baal Shem. So if you really want to have access to high Jewish spirituality, and the reason why it'll be practical, because it'll change your life. Right. You'll be able to live with equanimity and with peace and with harmony and with joy and with dveikus and feeling close to Hashem, with all the things that a person is searching for. Because every person is either people have a lack and they're looking to fill it, and they think that they're going to fill it with things and objects, and it never being filled. Or a person is looking that if they have a certain sense of fulfillment, they're looking for something deeper. There's a hierarchy. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's like a hierarchy of needs. Yeah. Like people have a physical need, then people have emotional needs, and have mental needs, and have spiritual needs. So this is a space to fill those needs.
So what you're saying is that for a person to live his life with meaning, with fulfillment, good advice is to tap in to this type of Hasidus and mysticism.
Absolutely.
That you're talking about.
Kabbalah, Chassidus is it's not a subject. People think there's a subject, like you're going to learn you're going to learn Chakir, Jewish philosophy. You're going to learn it it's a topic. Some people are intellectual, some people are not intellectual. It interests certain people, doesn't interest other people. It's a topic. Kabbalah is not Chassidus is not a topic. It's a way of life.
It's a way of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But what was before Hasidus? How did life look before Hasidus? Because we know the Baal Shem Tov made a revolution.
Correct.
Came in and he said, you know what? We're losing people left, right, and center. I'm going to come up with this huge new concept. And he had a lot of his nagdis against it. People were very against it because, it was new and this and that. And we see now what it did. I mean, so many years later. But how did life look before Hasidus? How did a person live?
It's it's very hard for us to understand this because we live in a very different era, so we don't understand what it means to live in medieval times or live in like deep Eastern Europe in the 1700s. But the short answer for us, if we were transported into that reality, extremely depressing.
Depressing. There was no life.
There's no joy. There's practice. In other words, you're doing the mitzvah,
the halachas, and everything,
and you find meaning in that. But people didn't have nafshistik. They didn't have the nefesh to experience anything more.
Right.
They were worried about their survival. Again, going back to the hierarchy of needs.
Right.
If you don't have food to put on your table, you can't be worried about feeling, love. It's like
emotions.
If love is,
you have no place for that.
There's no place. After the Holocaust, a lot of people will definitely identify with this. A lot of people that came after the war, and they have, the younger generation have tinnitus of the older generation that you never spoke to me about feelings. Well, feelings. If they had feelings, they would die. Anyone that had feelings would survive.
Yeah. So
there was a survival mode. In survival mode, you don't think about feelings.
Right.
So the 1700s in middle of Ukraine and Russia, Poland, it was dark times. It was survival.
Right.
The Baal Shem Tov is really a taste of the future because Baal Shem Tov, the Torah Chassidus came along, and that's what I want to say. It's not a philosophy. It's a way of life. The Baal Shem Tov gave oir. Oir is light. Light means a person feels lichtig, a person feels open and expansive. And the Torah of Baal Shem Tov is not a philosophy in a way that it's cerebral and it's intellectual. It's supposed to affect you. If you do this correctly, you're supposed to walk down the street a different way. You're supposed to be in this world physically in a different way. You're supposed to do business in a different way. You're supposed to be with your spouses in a different way. You're supposed to emotionally be different.
Your entire life is changed completely if you're into Sifra Hasidus.
Yes, not as information. I'll tell you an interesting story, which is very important and very apropos. The Magid was a very famous tzaddik and Makubal. He was a very famous person before he became a Talmud of the Baal Shem. But he was sickly, physically he was sickly. And it seems like on the Fiarach, the Maderig of the Magid, he had a shtickle like Morish Cher. He was a little down. That was his personality also. But intellectuals are Morish Cher. It's like it's usually consistent. People that love thoughts are usually very detached from that. And that's what the Magid was, a very cerebral, very big intellectual. And he heard about the Baal Shem, so he came to Baal Shem. He wanted to experience. He heard there's a new big teacher in the world and a big Rebbe. So he comes to Baal Shem, and he was there for Shabbos. He wasn't impressed. The Torah, okay, Torah. He also heard Torah. He was Talmud Pnei Shul. He's a big person. He didn't impress. Motzei Shabbos, he was sitting ready to leave, and he was sitting outside the Baal Shem's home. And the Toldus walks by and sees this young man sitting there. He says, what's going on? He says, I came here to get something. I didn't get it. I'm leaving. But he looked down. So the Toldus walked into the Baal Shem's room and started walking around. Didn't tell him directly. Started saying, there's someone sitting there, Marsh, that's a little depressed. How come you don't give him a little light? He says, okay, bring him in. So he called in the Magid. And the Magid said, she said, I'm leaving. It was nice meeting you, but I have nothing to do with you. So the Baal Shem said, maybe ask me a question. So before you leave, let's ask me a question. He says, actually, I do have a question. And he showed him that he found a steer in the Zohar, like a contradiction, two places in the Zohar. He says, maybe you'll have an answer to this. So Baal Shem Tov went into a trance, went into a deep state. And he started talking. And the Maggid describes this. He says, when the Baal Shem Tov started talking, he wasn't giving information anymore. He said, when he said the word angel, a malach, the room was filled with malachim. He said Atzilus, he felt the oil Atzilus. He gave him a spiritual experience of what these things are. He said, then he became a Rebbe. Which is the Torah Baal Shem Tov was experiential. We're not looking for more information. It's not another idea. If you can't experience Atzilus, or whatever that level is, if Atzilus is to say a very, like a dugris, a very practical language. If you're davening, or for that matter, davening is like a holy thing. But even if you're doing business or you're walking in the street and your mind is scattered, and when you're trying to think one thing, other things fall into your head, that's not Atzilus. Mm-hmm. That's the opposite, because it's klippah. It means that the mind is not clear. Mm-hmm. You know what Atzilus is? Clarity.
Full focus.
Full focus. When I can be fully present in what I'm doing right now. Wow. If I'm having conversations with you and I'm not thinking about you look like someone else.
Yeah.
That's Atzilus.
That's Atzilus. That's the taich of Atzilus.
That's a taich of Atzilus according to Chassidus. According to Chassidus means absolute presence and clarity of mind.
So where do you use Atzilus? By davening?
Every moment, right?
Your entire life has to be with Atzilus.
So you say I'm living with Atzilus means that I'm always present. I'm always, wherever I'm with, I want to be there fully.
And when you say present, you mean with the bunch, with the teachings of Hasidus.
Yeah, we mean present. Present means, first of all, I want to be present with the presence.
Right.
Right. I want to
What's going on?
And I want to be present with how do I know? How do I find the Rebbeinu Shalom? It's a nice word, Rebbeinu Shalom.
Right.
You know where you find Rebbeinu Shalom?
Wherever you let him in.
Wherever you are.
Right.
Letting in, that's already an experience of it.
Yeah.
If I'm having a conversation with you, right? So in the Chazal, this is this is the way Chazal would phrase it, that if ish v'ishtoi and the zachu shchina b'neim.
Yeah.
Which means whenever there's love and there's focus, that's where the shchina rests.
Right.
So if I'm having a conversation with someone, you walk into somebody's home, just to give you an example of this, let's say you walk into someone's home and this couple was fighting. You don't know that they're fighting. You walk into the room 20 minutes later, and you walk in and it doesn't feel right. There's like a tension in the air. It's not physical. They're looking at each other. You feel it.
Right.
Then you walk into a home, it's a lichtig.
Right.
Why? Because they love each other.
You feel the shchina over there.
You feel the shchina. Everyone's going to say, you really feel the shchina? Yeah, you do. You do. Shchina is mislabesh. Something is very tangible. Mm-hmm. The tangible feeling when you meet somebody and you feel the shchina's presence, it means the person is present and focused and loving and giving and not judgmental.
And how does a person come to that level is also, again, by believing, by...
So you have to. So that's how we started the conversation, actually, like this. We have to change our lens. That's really, we have to change lenses.
It's bringing in the Rebbeinu Shalom in your life.
Yeah, but how do you do that?
So you can't look, what you're saying, changing the lens is, because I'll tell you, it's a very funny thing. I speak to some people, and this guy mentioned to me that he went to his therapist. He's having problems, and he's talking to his therapist. And his therapist told him that he has a God wound. That's the phrase that he used. Yeah. That means that the God that you were represented to all these years was not in the nicest light. Right. He's like the boogeyman,
Yeah.
So he was trying to say that he told him that you're dealing with your God wound, and you need to change that lens.
Yeah, I mean, there's a famous story with the Baditchev. The Baditchev once went to Apikoris, and he says, "The God was zugleibs in Kleibechechnish."
Yeah,
it's like, I don't believe in this. The God that you don't believe in. I don't believe.
We don't believe in the same thing.
That's a different God. Yeah, we both don't believe in that God.
What do you say to a person who says like this? They don't like what they were told. You know how the Rebbeinu Shalom was catered to them. They're looking for something. They're mavakish, and they go around and they. Someone tells them there's a different God. There's not a God that you were told. There's a beautiful God that loves you, and of course, it's not just love. And,
it's not love.
The Rebbeinu Shalom is not a vatran. This is a whole relationship. But
by the way, if you really have loved someone, you really expect something from them.
Of course, it's like a regular relationship that you have. And how does he know that this is, if he is undoing whatever he was told? How does he know that this is the right? He's like, I don't believe in anything.
That's a very good question. I think you have to start from Aleph Beis.
What is Aleph Beis?
So the Aleph Beis, again, if you want to talk about the Aleph Beis in Torah Chassidus, right? So you want to get to the Aleph Beis.
First, you have to get the Aleph Beis of believing in the Rebbeinu Shalom.
So you start from Aleph Beis in Torah Chassidus. I would say that you start. I would say pick up with Tzivas Harivash, pick up Torah Baal Shem, read it like you never don't listen to anybody. Just read it on your own,
and that will show you a love.
It'll open you up to something that's beyond, and you'll start from there. But you have to take the text. That's what I'm saying. That's why the screen, because we interpret the world through a certain lens, and that's no matter what we are. Everyone has a
But
lens.
you said something very important. We look at the world and at the Rebbeinu Shalom the way we look
Correct.
at him, not the facts. Is that what it is? It's
Yeah,
not-
or well, fact is a big word, but
yeah.
but I'm saying there's a certain, we want to put on the most clean, transparent, holy, loving lens possible.
You want to do it as a positive person. If you were
Yeah.
taught till now negativity, you want to at least try the positivity and see if it works for you. Not just say I'm throwing out the baby with the bathwater.
Exactly. I honestly believe deep in my heart that anyone that's exposed properly to
Right.
Torah Chassidus.
Right.
I know there's religious trauma with Chassidus also. I hear this from a lot of Chassidish Chavra.
Yeah.
That they can't open a certain Chassidish farm because it was rammed down their throat.
Right.
As if it's like a psaz and Fregnish Conchilas and this is what it means.
But let me ask you a question. Does Hasidus that you're talking about,
Yeah.
Sifri Hasidus, the Baal Shem Tov, and we'll get into Kabbalah in a minute, does it look like the Hasidus that we know today?
You mean in practice?
Yeah, I mean, what you see, kehillas and communities and organizations, and I feel that it took a turn.
It's a very complicated question you're asking because on a simple level, everyone's of course it's different, and so this is a big question because it's the world of ideas, and then ideas become movements.
Correct.
So this is like a big psychological question that a lot of theorists have dealt with. Like, what happens when pure ideas are lived?
Wow.
So when pure ideas are lived, it becomes a community. Community becomes already doctrine. Doctrine becomes dogma.
Wow.
So that's the inevitability. That's almost like the dark side.
Because they look at it as, listen, in order to hold this community together, there's got to be rules and regulations.
Correct, that's dogma.
And I can't ruin this business.
Correct.
So you're telling me very nice things, but I still have a school and I still have a...
I get it.
And people fall out from this because they don't relate.
I agree. So I agree on one level. That's like the projection, the inevitable negative projection of any movement. Major movement starts off as a pure idea, but then it has to be lived.
Right.
Once it lives, it becomes constitutionalized, it becomes dogma, and it becomes doctrine. That's unfortunate. And that's why even Torah Chassidus, you'll see, there's always revolutions within the evolving of Chassidus. Like there's a Baal Shem, and then there's a revolution, the Alter Rebbe, there's a revolution. Things are constantly evolving. That's one level. On the other hand, there is something which is important, which is the idea of that there's the collective of Klal Yisrael, Knesset Yisrael, the collective has Kedusha, has Ruach HaKodesh.
Everyone who was at Har Sinai is what you're saying.
Not individuals. Individuals not so much.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the collective, the tzibur. Ain't tzibur mesa. There's an idea like the tzibur of Klal Yisrael is holy. I don't want to get into specifics of different types of communities, but there's beauty in all these things as well.
Correct.
That even though there's maybe it doesn't shine with the beauty of maybe it's too judgmental and maybe
everybody has their
everyone
own,
has their own shtick.
Yeah.
But as a tzura of a tzibur, there's a lot of beauty and love and connections and stuck. There's a lot of beautiful things that happen because of this.
Right.
So even though the ideals become constitutionalized and dogma and etc., there's still something about
tremendous beauty.
Tremendous amount of beauty, and even if people don't feel comfortable and they feel like they have to leave because it's too strong, they are still going to feel a certain type of connection to this, and they should always. And a person, lechacha me'artzecha, like the ultimate journey is to leave and be in the same place at the same time. Mm-hmm. You go from your place, but recognize that you're coming from that place. Right. So and there's beauty to be held in that idea. Right. But what's interesting is, I think, as we're talking in this conversation, which is kind of a fascinating phenomenon in the world, the Jewish world in general, which is the first time in Jewish history, from the time of the Churban, where you have multiple Jewish communities and kehillas coming together, living in the same proximity, in the same area. Mm-hmm. This hasn't happened ever. Mm-hmm. So there's two sides to this. What happens? One is that when you have different kehillas in different communities, let's say in Ashkenazi communities, will be more simplified. So you have, let's say, Hungarian Jews and Russian Jews coming to live in the same block, in the same area. It's a recipe for two things: either for disaster, because very simply, Yiddishkeit is practiced a little different. Every place has their own way of practicing Yiddishkeit. Right. Their own chumras and their own kulas. Everyone has their own chumras and kulas. But when you live down the block, especially if you're a from person, and the other guy does more chumras than you, so what do? You take on his chumras. The other person takes on the other chumras. And what you get is this chumras. because no one wants to be the makel.
Right.
But because this guy is chumrah, I never did the chumrah. I come from Russia. That was not a chumrah in Russia. But now this guy comes from Hungary. This is a chumrah. So the Hungarian takes the Russians. Russia takes the Hungarian, and then it becomes chumras against chumras and becomes very, very unlight. And the Baal Shem was very makbid not against chumras.
Right.
Anyways, so that's like the negative side. The other side, like the positive side of this, kibbutz goliath,
Right.
is that people are open now for the first time to new ideas because they're forced to see that the way they were raised maybe and the certain community that they came from, and there's beauty in there and there's holiness and everything, but there's other ideas that actually maybe express things a little bit differently. And that gives people an opportunity, and this is why it's such a...
it gives them an opportunity to be a elchi.
Yeah, and they can actually see that there's other people doing things differently, and maybe I should learn from that, learn from here, learn this farm, that farm, like open the person to mefatech that, which is actually a big schus that we're living in this generation.
What about Masoira and all these?
That's why there's always this tension.
Right.
There's always a tension between... I would
giving
say,
up something
correct.
for generation.
So this is a very good question. You're actually this is a very important question. I think a lot of Frum Jews, especially from Chassidim, are dealing with this issue. Is I personally think you don't have to give up your Messiah ever. Your Messiah is your Messiah. Messiah is not your lens. Your Messiah is your way of practice. Mm-hmm. A person loves yapshik. That should be part of your tradition. You eat yapshik. I never eat yapshik in my life.
Right.
I can't eat yapshik.
Yeah.
I'll never eat it.
Right.
But some people eat pachan. Some people.
Right.
This is part of your Messiah. It's celebrated. This is who you come from.
Yeah.
If it's not working for you intellectually and emotionally and physically, and there's something wrong, so then open up your mind to other ideas.
Because the idea is, atzvas, you don't want to become depressed, or you don't want to feel that you're not productive, or you don't want to feel that you're not growing.
For sure.
What's the whole point of the point of the Hasidus?
Correct.
If it doesn't make you shine.
Yeah, exactly. Chassidus has to make you shine, and find it wherever you're going to find it. Doesn't mean you have to leave your Messiah, but don't forget, if you're a satmar, bava, whatever, do your thing, do it well, but open your mind to feel some oil.
Right.
Wherever you're going to find the oil, find the oil.
Excellent. Now back to Kabbalah. So the Sefer Hasidus Baal Shem Tov, we know where does Kabbalah and what is we know in Sfas there's Kabbalah.
You want to know like a history, like a physics, like a real?
I want to understand who came together with this and who we don't understand it. It's Gilgilim, Neshumas.
You're asking a lot of big questions. This could be like a history course if you want. Okay.
We want to understand a little bit on a tip of the iceberg, at least to know. Now we hear this thing. If you see, I'll tell you where I hear it. Yeah. If Chaz Hashem something is going through a very hard time, and and sometimes we see this: a child comes into this world, and 2 years later we hear something happened to the child.
Yeah.
So one of the ways how we were taught a yid to think is, this child had a mission over here for 2 years to come down, and the child came. And you were the shliach to be the father of this child. And the day came. You did your shlichus, the child did his shlichus. It just gives you peace. It gives you can go through the worst of the worst, living with this concept of this is not the first time we are here. But we're not with our feet on the ground. These are people, we're talking to people who are like, the concept of this is my child, this is me, and I love this child, and of course we don't want to, these children are not nachas machines, and these children are not here to serve us. But if someone comes to you and tells you, this was a Gilgal, you don't know what happened in previous life. What does that mean?
Okay, so you're asking really two questions to break it down. One is the history of Kabbalah,
correct,
a little bit, and one is this idea of this. Of reincarnation and Gugulim. So let's just say like this: that Kabbalah is basically, in a very simplified version, is the spiritual theology. Theology is like the philosophy, if you wish, of Torah. That means when the Moshiach Kibbutz Torah Sinai, there was Torah Shebiksav, which is what we should do, the law, and then there's the deeper reason for the law,
right?
And that's a Messiah. And what we experience about Torah. for the most part, was actually the spirituality. We didn't, the physicality, the Gemara, the Vias Bai Rav was given over time.
Later, yeah.
Later, in other words, it was articulated much over time. But the original is the spirituality. So the spirituality, to say it in a very simple language, the Jewish spirituality of Torah is Kabbalah. Now, the word Kabbalah was not used, to be honest.
Right. Well, this is new.
This is relatively new. Kabbalah is like an 800-year-old word. It's in 1200s.
Who are the major giants who got together and
good question. So, for the first years of Klal Yisrael, it was the times of the Nevi'im.
Right.
So the Gemara says that there was Kaflaim Ki Yetz Mitzrayim. That means there was double the amount of Yetz Mitzrayim, which is 1.2 million.
Right.
And the Medrash Shir Hashirim says it was actually for every man prophet, there was a prophetess, which was a woman.
Wow.
So there's 2.5 million prophets in a short period of time of 500 years. If you do the math, there were not that many Jews in the world at that time. There was no 200. There was maybe 10 million people in the entire world. So you're talking about a very short period of time, which is that, and there were system of prophecy. There was Bnei Nevi'im, which means if you went into the times of Beis Hamikdash, and you went into yeshiva, what were you learning? You were learning prophecy. That was yeshiva. There was no Gemara, there was no Mishnah. There was certain oral traditions, old Messiah, but what you were sitting and learning was how to receive prophecy. Mm-hmm. So the main theology, the main philosophy of Yiddishkeit was always a spiritual philosophy. Bayesheni came along, that's when there's emergence of Torah Sheba'al Peh, that's when you have the Zugas, then you have Chazal, then you have Gemara, and that continues for a long period of time. And at that period of time, a lot of the mystical, spiritual traditions of Yiddishkeit went into to private, the Messiah became more privatized, which means only scholars and people that are very involved. But Hamoinam, like we said before, it's a hierarchy of needs. Most people didn't need this they needed just to know what to do, how to do it. If they had problems, they asked the Rav, they asked the Gaon. That was the whole conversation. Most people are simplified. The beginning of the emergence, which we call Kabbalah, happens during the time of Yitzchak Saginar. He's the Avi of Kabbalah. Who's Yitzchak Saginar? He's Isaac the Blind. He's from Provence, which is the south of France, and he's a son of the Ravid, the famous Ravid on the Rambam. He was the first person to speak after almost 1,000 years, 2,000 years, to speak Kabbalistic ideas, spiritual ideas like reincarnation, etc., things like this, openly. Mm-hmm. And he went to Gerona, which is in Spain, and there he had 3 primary Talmidim, Israel, Azariah, and the Ramban, who's famous. So the Ramban is the first one to write openly. He was the first one to teach his Rebbe Chaver, and then the first one to actually write was the Ramban. So the Ramban, Alator, if you look in the Ramban always says Zel Soy, this, he doesn't review Kabbalah. The Zohar was not yet published then. They didn't know yet about the Zohar. So there was Sefer HaBoyer, which is an earlier text, 1100s, and there was Sefer Yetzirah. Other than that, there was traditions, Messiahs, but nothing was printed. In the year 1290, I'm just giving you a little history. That's when Yitzchak, that's when Moshe de Leon started publishing the Sefer HaZohar. And it was a tribute to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, to Rashbi. Mm-hmm. So he's saying that this is an older tradition, older Messiah, which was given over from teacher to student, was never written down, or was written down, there was little edits, but it was never written down as a full book. And Moshe de Leon started, and his Chabura of Mekubalim started putting out the Sefer HaZohar. So that's when the Zohar started becoming very popular in the 1300s, the 1400s. And then the real explosion of these ideas, this is just a very broad history, is the 1500s. And the 1500s is after the expulsion of Spain. So Jews of 1492 were expelled from Spain. A lot of the great Chacham of Spain ended up in the Ottoman Empire, if you're familiar with Jewish history. And the Ottoman Empire controlled a large swath of land, including Tzfas. Yeah. So a lot of them ended up in Tzfas, like very famous Migurush Svard, like the Ramak. So he's a Cardaveros, he's a Cordova, and the Beis Yosef, and the Mabit.
That's why they all ended up in Tzfas, became the center.
That became the center.
Right.
So that's when Kabbalah really became mainstream.
Right.
And then, of course, the Arizal lived right after that.
Also in Tzfas.
Yeah, also in Tzfas. So Arizal was a little younger. He took over and he became the main Makubal. And then all Kabbalah follows the Teres Ari afterwards.
It was entire Klal Yisrael from every angle on this bandwagon.
This is you're asking a very good question. It's a very good question. So the answer is 90%.
90%. What about the 10%?
There were 10%. So
who are these people?
You want to know the names? There are 10% of people that there was a very big divide in the 1300s. There was a famous controversy, a very famous controversy in Jewish history, which is called the Rambam controversy. Maimonides controversy. Right. What's the controversy? The Rambam was the first one to explain the Torah logically.
Right. He gave out this cipher, Moira Nevuchim, right? But this is at the same time?
So right before. So Rambam was a little before, like 50 years before the Ramban.
Right.
So when the Rambam published the Sefer Yad was accepted universally right away. But he started this Sefer Amada was a little bit more controversial. Right. And then when he put in the Moira Nevuchim, there became a whole bunch of Jewish great Rishonim,
right?
I mean, great people who became very rationalistic. And there became a divide between the rationalists and the mystics, between the Chokrim and the Kabbalah.
Right.
This is a huge divide. The Ramban was a sort of like a hybrid between the two. The Ramban actually was a philosopher, also Makubal, and he was the one that brought Kabbalah much more stronger. Right. He pushed the tide towards Kabbalah, and then all the Talmidei Ramban, the Rashba, and then eventually Rabbeinu Bechai and the Rukanti and the Tzeilah Derech, all these Talmidei Ramban, they pushed Kabbalah and it became mainstream. There was always a 10% of
opposition
to Torah Kabbalah. Yes, there was,
because the Rambam was controversial to begin with. No, he always. There were people who were like, the
Rambam was B'shaita. Yes, he was controversial, not because of his writings in halacha. That was not so much the issue. Some people did have a little issue with that, but that was the main issue. The main issue was the Sefer Amada and the Moira Nevuchim. And then
in Chabad, Rambam is
so. But I just want to say, history proved that this is a very important thing. This is important to understand, and it actually related to something I said before. There's something that's called the collective unconscious of Klal Yisrael.
Right.
The collective unconscious of Klal Yisrael is prophetic. Imei Neviim, B'nei Neviim. How do we know if a text is part of the canonized, is part of the Messiah? Let's say I said I write something.
Right.
Is it emes? Is it Torah's Chesed or Torah's emes?
Right.
It's a nice idea. It makes you feel good, or is it not Torah's emes? How do I know?
Right.
How do I know? How do we know? How do we know if this sefer is good or not?
Right.
And the answer is time. Klal Yisrael accepts something over a long period of time. That's the only proof, because Klal Yisrael has a
good nose.
Exactly. So today the Rambam is Kodesh HaKadoshim.
Kodesh HaKadoshim.
And it's not
everyone.
There's no one now. So the Rambam.
That alone is what you're saying. That is the proof. That's the pudding.
Yeah. Exactly. So you want to say the Rambam in Bismani there was a big controversy? Yes, there was a big controversy, but history proved that the Rambam was Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he was Kodesh HaKadoshim.
Amazing. So Kabbalah is one giving over to the other. That's the actual title.
Kabbalah means received. Yeah,
received. So it means one is giving over to the other.
So again, originally it was very private. And it was a private Messiah.
It was only for special, because they even say that the Zohar, you shouldn't look into it before
a
certain age.
That had to do.
What is that?
That's another controversy. That had to do with Shabtai Tzvi. So that because there were periods of time.
He used it. Shabtai Tzvi used Zohar, Kabbalah.
It's not only to use it. The whole reason why Shabtai Tzvi became very popular is because there were parts of Italy, certain parts of in their persecution, they didn't allow for the Gemara to be printed. For certain parts of history. So if there's no Gemara, what do you learn? So people started learning the Zohar only. They only learned the Zohar. They sat in the base of Madish and learned Zohar. Especially in Italy, certain pockets of Italy. The Zohar became very popular. The students of Shabtai Tzvi himself was a schizophrenic madman, but he was brilliant. He's very charismatic.
Right.
But his students use pieces of the Zohar, which the Zohar is a very elastic text. It's very metaphorical, and if you don't have feet on the ground, you can translate it in many different ways. There were even Lahavdil Christians that became Christian Kabbalah.
Yeah,
they use the Zohar to prove.
I think this Kabbalah centers in California became very popular in Hollywood. No,
it's like
very not that it slowed down a little bit. Yeah, but it used to be at one point in time. Every celebrity went in the Kabbalah centers. They opened it up. Why was that? Because they were searching for something.
A very simple answer. It's more than that, actually. I actually think I actually know I know the Sugi very well. I know them. I know this clever. It's non-Jews wanting to know what Jews are doing. It has nothing to do with Kabbalah.
They just wanted to get they wanted to figure out what's going on inside.
Yeah, I think
how they're thinking.
Yeah, I think Jews are fascinating to the world.
Right.
Jews are the most successful minority in history.
It was a great insight. It was
right.
like a class.
You can't walk in, if you're a non-Jew, you can't walk into the shul. They'll throw it out.
Right.
But imagine
The center makes it.
center
look
says you can walk in now and study what Jews are studying. In Korea they're studying Gemara.
Gemara, yeah.
Because people are fascinating. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, people don't understand. It's Hashem. I mean, this is emotional.
This is a little more than just
just this intellect. But people are looking at these people and saying, how do you survive for thousands of years? You're a tiny little amount of people, and you're making the most noise in the world.
Right.
How do you do this? What's the secret sauce?
What's the secret sauce?
So people are thinking maybe it's Kabbalah, maybe it's Gemara. Maybe
This was a fad. It was like a popular fad.
Yeah. Unfortunately, but the fad unfortunately disappeared a little bit. But I still think that the world is waiting for Jews to speak up and to say what we believe in. I think the world needs us. The world needs Jews.
In one word, if you could describe how does Kabbalah help a person? If you implement Kabbalah in your life, you're living with this Atzilus, right? And you live in. We'll talk about Gilgilim in a second. How does that? How does a person benefit from that?
So, every single experience. I'll say it a little different. Every single experience that we have, there's multiple layers how you can experience it. Kabbalah and Chassidus is the deepest way I can experience every single experience in life.
Wow, this is physical and,
everything.
And spiritual.
Everything.
It enhances your life.
Everything. If it's the truth, it has to seep into and has to permeate every single aspect of your life.
So, give me an example of a person who is going through an episode, and he applies Kabbalah to his life.
Okay, you're saying Kabbalah Chassidus, but I'm saying that idea. Yeah. Give me a specific thing. Let's say a person is hiking.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a physical act you're doing. Yeah. Physically you're moving, so that's you're physically active, and then you can start thinking about this. Like what am I actually doing now? Like what's the process that's happening? What I'm doing
in your
now?
Body.
In my body. My body is this one organism.
Yeah, it's a machine.
It's a machine, and everything is working in
parts
unison.
Are going in directions.
And even though I'm not really conscious and my feet is walking, everything's.
And my brain sends messages.
Correct.
To my feet.
And there's a nerve system everything is interconnected. And then I realized that it's not only interconnectivity between me and my body, but actually the things that I'm stepping on, there's on an atomic level, we're actually all interconnected. If I push down on this stone, it's going to have an effect that pushes the next stone and have a butterfly effect throughout the entire world, and it'll change the weather in China. And I recognize that the whole ecosystem, if I can actually start living this way, my walk, just physically taking a hike, it's not just taking a hike up the mountain. It's I'm participating in the great unfolding of life right now. Right now that I'm walking.
So you're connecting to Hashem, is what you're saying.
What's Hashem?
By Hisbonenus, by thinking about.
By connecting to this, I recognize the Achdus Hashem that's expressed in the entire creation.
Creator of the world.
Yeah, within everything.
Right.
So I'm connecting with Hashem, with the Koyach Haliki.
Right.
Within everything, and that gives me life. And then I'm not tired also.
And you also are, a lot of gratitude comes with that.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Everything. There's a lot of components to this.
There's a lot of components to this. It changes your hike. It changes. It's a way of being in this world.
Yeah.
There's just a different way of being where a person is grateful, lives with plenty, lives with abundance, lives with self-confidence, lives with connectivity, lives. So much of life is we have mechanical interactions. Right. You know what mechanical interactions is? Mechanical interactions is an I and a thou. It's like I and an it. I need something from you, you need something from me, so I'm just interacting with you. But when you recognize that this is a big, beautiful tapestry that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, and is the vibrancy that exists within everything. So when I'm just having a connection, a relationship, interaction with you, I'm actually having an interaction with the Eibishter.
Right.
I'm always having an interaction with Eibishter, right?
It's a tremendous awareness. That's what it is. It's a 24-hour, whatever you do, an extreme awareness of the Rebbeinu Shalom.
In everything.
You move your fingers.
When a person interacts with somebody, right? Yeah. If I interact with you in a very mechanical way, then I'm just looking to get something from you. You're looking to get something from me. And then, by the way, this translates also how we look at the world. We work at the world, and we think the world is very cold and mechanical. And
the world is a war. It's
against us. Exactly. Yeah. And there's no real connection.
Right.
The more we live with Achdus, Yichud, the more I recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is Kaviyachud, the Roshim of Lakus. This is like Hashem's glove.
Right.
Right? And this is like the way Hashem is expressing himself in this through this. So if I'm having interaction with you, or I'm walking in the street, I'm really talking to Hashem.
Right.
So the world becomes alive. And if the world becomes alive, then I have not impersonal, cold interaction in different interactions, but everything becomes alive. And the world starts responding that way.
Right.
Because Hashem tzilcha. If you interact in the world that it's alive, I was speaking to someone, I got 2 days ago. He's a very important in a certain world, not yet a frum Jew, but a very important Jew in other ways. So he said that. I asked him, "What's your secret thing? Well, why are you so much in this world?" He says, "I believe in magic." I said, "So what's magic to you?" He says, "Magic to me means that Hashem is everything and everywhere." I said, "That's Hisbonenus. That's Kabbalah. You got it. That's the point." The moment you read, I was once by a doctor. It's a funny story, but I'll tell you, it's cute. I told it to him, so I remind the story. I was once by a doctor. He's a Teshuva. He has a huge office with many doctors. So he was sitting, I'm talking to him, we're schmoozing. So I asked him, you have a big practice. How do you choose your doctors? Like, what's the criteria?
Yeah.
You check the medical records. How do you choose who to work in your office? He said, I check all that, the background, to make sure they're good doctors. But I asked him only one question. I said, do you believe in magic? And if the person says, I believe in magic, I hire him. If he says, what are you talking about? I'm a scientist. I do math. He says, my doctor. The moment we believe in magic, what's magic? Magic means that the world is not mechanical.
Right.
There's an aliveness. The koyach haboyer, the koyach is pulsating throughout creation at every moment. Nothing's impossible.
More than the naked eye can see.
Yes. Not this. This is just. These are really. This is teeming with life.
Right.
And the more I recognize teeming with life, there's nothing stops me. Everything's possible. Miracles is always a possibility. I never give up. I never say it's impossible.
Right.
Everything, and that's the way. And it's not only just a mindset, but Hashem tzilcha. That's the way the world starts responding to you.
Right.
You are why you're gifted. Why do you have all these brachas in your life? Because you believe in bracha, ve'ei bracha. You become the bracha.
You actually you attract this energy.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if not, you shut it off.
You attract the opposite.
Exactly.
No, you attract the opposite.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that you're saying, what is you want to live this world? You want to go through life that is mechanical and cold and indifferent and natural and it's
not working.
Yeah, and it's sad and it's depressing and
that's why people they show their feelings off. We spoke about it before.
Correct.
They show their feelings off because they look at life like they project.
Correct.
They look at life the way they see it from their own view.
Correct.
Not from but you got to be humble enough to let in some other ideas also in your life.
What they really need to get them out of this funk, out of this klipa, really.
Right.
They really need a seilach harav. They need like a friend or a kanei lechuchav. They need to get somebody that can actually look at them correctly.
Correct. You're talking about love now.
Yeah.
Because people are missing this part of someone being seen.
Being seen.
That's what it is.
Yeah. I want to tell you this. There was a Chassidish guy that we had a chabura in Bar Park for years, learning like deep ideas. And there's one real big mavakish, and after years he was crying to me. He says, I don't feel anything. I learn all this from him. I know everything, and I know all. I feel garnet. I have nothing. And he's a serious person, and he says the whole day learn. I said, take a hike. Just take a hike. Get out of this form. Just take a hike. Get into nature.
Right.
Just open yourself up.
Start feeling.
Start feeling.
World.
Start feeling. Yeah. You'll start feeling. You want to feel a little kus? First start feeling your child, feeling the tree, feeling the nature. Then you open yourself up. You have to mafatech this. You have to open this up. Right. It's not about information. It's about opening of consciousness, opening of your soul.
What would you tell to a person who is like he's okay? He wants to be a good Jew. He wants to be a good Yid. And he knows everything, and he learns, and he does everything. But he doesn't feel Shabbos. Like you just said, I don't feel it. It comes Friday. If to him it's like a social thing. Yeah. We get together, quality time, and it's a family, and he understands. He doesn't touch his phone.
I got it.
But he wants to feel, he wants to connect. Of course, you see, if you believe, you know that this is what connects you to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're a witness that the Rebbeinu Shalom created the world. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else. You belong to this tribe. You vote for the Rebbeinu Shalom. If you have Shabbos, I voted for the Rabban Shalom. But he doesn't feel it. He wants to. According to your teachings and your Svurim, what would you say to a person that says, how does he start feeling the Rabban Shalom, the Shabbos Kodesh?
It's a good question. I actually wrote a few Svurim on Shabbos because of this. One's called the Mystery of Shabbos, one's called Raza de Shabbos.
Because people
but
want to
people want, but I'm working on another book, and it's very important. You know, there was a very smart Yid, Yaakov Kamenetsky.
Yeah.
So when he came to America, he once said that the oilam over here, it's not a problem with keeping Shabbos. They don't keep Shabbos in America, 1930s, 40s. He said they don't keep Erev Shabbos.
Erev Shabbos.
What's Pshat? Pshat is, you know, we need to transition into spaces, just like in space and in consciousness. The same thing also in time. We need transitions. You can't go from one place to another place.
It's like when you listen to something, you listen to crazy music, and one of a sudden you get into some sad stuff.
No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work, exactly.
You have to ease into it.
Exactly. You need techniques of transition. You want to feel the oil of Shabbos,
Kavaldi.
You need to start
Wednesday.
Yeah, that's right. That's the best.
That's a little too much.
Yeah, so the reason you have to start Wednesday. You have to have a machshav, maisim on Wednesday, diburim on Thursday.
There are people you can hear from big tzaddikim. They would say they were waiting all week for Shabbos.
Correct. But most people can't do it. So I just say it like this.
Yeah.
This practical things, very practical things. L'mashal, for example, don't open up an email that's going to talk to you about business a few hours before Shabbos. Don't open up the mail that you're going to get a bill. It's going to ruin your Shabbos. You're going to enter Shabbos with.
So what you're saying, you have to be consciously aware.
Yes.
Of yourself.
Yes.
And of your surroundings. Correct. And of the yontiv.
Correct.
And whatever is coming right now.
Correct.
Like before a wedding,
correct.
You will not.
Exactly.
You will not answer emails before you marry off your daughter.
And then you're going to show up to your wife, your child,
to the wedding,
and you're going to feel You're going to feel, I feel alive. Why? Because you were preparing for a month, and you bought your suit, and you bought your thing, and you got ready. That's the part. You need to transition, and you have to do also like physical. You know, we're very visceral people, we're physical people. Marshall, there's an idea to go to the mikveh of Shabbos. Besides all the ruchnistic and yana, but I'm telling you, it's also gashmis, especially a hot mikveh.
Puts you in that vibe, is what you're saying.
Because we're full of tension. A person's full of tension. What releases tension? Heat. It's very simple. The Arizal writes this in a high, you want to bring the Kabbalah on 1,000 levels.
Right.
The Arizal writes this, the Zohar Vayakla writes this, that it's Shalevis and it's oil. What is it saying? It's saying during the week you're full of tension and you're running and you're jumping. You need to release the tension. Go into a hot mikveh. It releases everything. Sit there for a few minutes, let go of everything. And then also like meditate, like do this as a kavanah. When you put your head under the water, just let go of all your daigas and let go of all your worries and transition. You know, when you take off your big dechol,
and you change, because that's why last week I think the parsha was about the kahanim.
Yeah, changing the begadim.
It had a lot. It had a huge impact.
Of course,
a police officer walks around with a uniform.
He feels like a police officer.
Feels like a police officer. There's a reason for it.
Exactly. When you take off, the Arizal is very makbid not to wear the big dechol and big Shabbos. Why? This represents a certain type of way I'm being in this world. Take it off, but not only rip off your shirt. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
Think about what am I doing? I'm unbuttoning my levushim, my garments, the way the interface that I have throughout the week, and I'm letting it go. I'm changing it. Now I'm going to go into the mikveh. I'm going to get birthed. I'm going to let go. Transition. Let the process of transition move you to get to a place of the Or, and then you'll get to Shabbos. You'll feel it.
Wow, it's amazing, because it seems like what you're saying is from the beginning. You were talking about Kabbalah and all these teachings, is that. It's examining your life on a tremendous level. You can't just live life just like comfort zone. It's 20.
You could, yeah.
But you're not going to get the results.
No, you're not
alive.
Correct.
So what I'm taking out from it so far is that you have to live consciously every minute of the day, in every yontav and every Shabbos and every occasion. You have to be tuned in 200%.
Yeah. If you want to live.
If you want to live life.
If you want to be full of joy and positivity and hope, and you want to have lichtige face, a lichtige kinder, a lichtige wife, and lichtige family, you have to be tuned in.
You have to be tuned into life.
Or else you live mechanical, and then your life becomes pathetic and sad.
Mitzvah sanushim u'lemida. You know, they do that.
And then you're not
you're
not successful in anything. You're not successful emotionally. You don't have you're not loved. You don't feel love.
You can't be the best husband like that. You can't be the best father like that.
Correct.
It's
you can't show up
amazing stuff.
You can't show up to life.
What about Moyach Shalat al Alev in Kabbalah and teachings of Tanya and the power of that? When do you use the lev and when do you use the moyach? It's a complicated thing because people, since you're a person who lives with awareness and feelings and emotions, and like you just Shabbos, you just said start Wednesday, get into it. This is lev. This is all lev, right? But then you have to put your brain to it also. The brain comes in when it has to balance it.
There's the Alter Rebbe actually addresses this in the Gerus HaKodesh. Mostly, famous, like the Alter Rebbe quotes that it's natural that the mind controls the heart. But it
is natural or it's avoided?
No, natural. In other words, so let me explain this. Alter Rebbe actually writes that there are two madregas of the lev. There's two different levels of the lev. There's two levs, which means there's the superficial emotions that a person has, and you're in control of that. Which means if I want to, let's say, I don't want to say superficial, but created emotions. Let's say with a spouse, right? So a spouse is someone you never met, right? Let's say in the beginning of a marriage, and you relate to this person. It's not innate. It's not like you're conditioned to this love, right? It's something you have to work on. So Moshiach love means you have to think about what the person, why you love this person, and the gratitude you have to this person, what kind of amazing spouse they are. That will bring the love. So the love, that type of emotion, is produced by the mind. But then there's a love that you have for a child. Love for a child you never thought about when your child was born. Think about it. It's not. This is deeper love. So when you're talking about avodah in spiritual practice and avodas Hashem, you want to break open the avos soteros, like the Alter Rebbe calls it, the inner love that's natural, like a child has for a parent. This is the inner love that a parent has for a child. This is like that love which is natural, and then you want also to function on an external level, also that in your outer expressions of love would also be affected, that you should have that. And that's what you use in Moichin. So you're always...
So for V'yahavtu as Hashem Elokechu, what do you use?
So this is an interesting thing. So the Alter Rebbe, the Maggid asks the Shaila, V'yahavtu is a mitzvah to love. But how can it be a mitzvah to love? You can't tell someone to love someone.
Right, that's a feeling.
It can't be a mitzvah. There can't be a mitzvah davar shebelev. So the Maggid writes that the mitzvah is Hisbonenus.
Right.
So, but the Hisbonenus, this is how it works. It's kind of like a flip. The Hisbonenus arouses the superficial lev. Mm-hmm. The superficial love lets you to drop into the true love. Mm-hmm. So sometimes when we're not feeling something, because let's go talk about the transitions. Let's say you're not really feeling it. So then think about it. Say, okay, but this is the right time. Now it's Pesach, and I want to really get into this. And I'm not feeling it yet.
Right.
But it's going to open up the more external lev, and that's going to crack you open to like.
So it's a one link into each other.
Exactly, it's linked.
Now on the topic of Hisbonenus, I know that I think in Chabad, Tanya, and there's a lot of Hisbonenus going on. Like use your mind and examine and be aware and stuff like that. But then you also have pieces on meditation, which is Hisbodedus, right? So explain Hisbodedus versus Hisbonenus, because I'll tell you what it is. Yeah. I'm very much into Hisbodedus. I'm like a simple guy. I just want to connect. I love it. So, but Hisbonenus is huge also, because going into the stuff that I don't even understand.
So it's interesting. I actually just wrote a book on Hisbonenus.
Wow.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called, but I don't remember. But I wrote it. It's in English. But the idea is, let's go back to the original conversation. One of the things that we talked about. The Baal Shem is interested in oil, is interested in light,
spreading light,
in dveikus, in ava, that a person should be expansive and open and transcendent and alive. That's the objective.
When you say dveikus is yearning.
No, dveikus is not yearning. That's kisufim. Kisufim is yearning.
Kisufim is yearning.
Dveikus is actually feeling connected.
Connected to the v'duvik
beishtai,
and also elodavka boy. It says that they're So that's what? What is that called in English?
Dveikus. There's no real word for it. It's cleaving, but it's a wrong word.
Cleaving, okay.
It means I'm attached. I'm one.
Right. So when you say dveikus, you mean dveikus Hashem?
Yeah,
or dveikus with people, with the world.
It's the depth of people is Hashem.
Right.
The depth of the world
you
is
see Hashem in everything. That's
Hashem's
what the word
everything.
is. Yeah.
There's no duality.
I got you.
Yeah. When you daven sometimes Shemon Esrei for 2 minutes and you feel like, That's dvekas.
Right.
What is it? I'm connected. I'm connected to everything, to everything, the whole world, to everything before time, after time, from the beginning of time, end of time. This is like something that's transcendent. The Alter Rebbe's Hisbonenus, which is very cerebral and intellectual, which is to be mizbonen on a topic, to go through deeply, to think about it, and to penetrate it, to meditate on it. This is the derech of the Alter Rebbe, really, right? Hisbonenus. But ultimately, this is why they both end up in the same source.
Hisbonenus and Hisbodedus
all end up in the same place. Because ultimately, the Alter Rebbe wants the implosion of intellect. Because we're intellectual people, most people. You say you're not intellectual, but every person is a certain intellectual in certain areas in their life.
Right.
The Alter Rebbe wants that the wholeness of the human being, the fullness of who you are, should be Davuk HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything.
Yeah. Whichever way you can bring it out.
Right. So in other words, if I say, a person says, I'm Davuk HaKadosh Baruch Hu only through my lev. But when I think my thoughts, I have negative thoughts and I have doubts and I have uncertainties.
But deep down, I'm connected.
Right. The Alter Rebbe says it's not good enough because then your mind is not connected. And then the problem is that then your superficial emotions. The Alter Rebbe says, I want to make you one with Hashem always, all times.
Right.
You're an intellectual. Most people are, the difference between a human and an animal is the rational brain. So that's like the basic definition. Right. Animals have some type of emotions. Intellect, they don't. Yeah. So the human being is intellectual. So I'm going to take you and I say, I want you to get to that same place of dvekus. So what I want is you to also experience dvekus in your seichel. But dvekus and seichel is a steer. Right. Because seichel means, by definition, intellect means
logic.
Logic. And logic means I'm thinking about something. If I'm thinking about something, I'm not that thing. Right? If I'm thinking about this table, I'm not the table.
Right.
I can't.
Can't be one with the table.
Exactly. Right. That's not logic. Right. Logic means a detachment. I'm thinking about it. I'm not it.
Yeah. You're actually one step higher.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Higher or lower, it doesn't matter, right? But I'm detached.
But you're away from that.
Exactly. Dvekas means I'm one with it.
Right.
So the Alter Rebbe says, I want you to mizbana so much, so deep, that eventually there's going to be a collapse of your seichel, and you become one.
Wow.
So they're both going to the place of one.
Right.
So if you take all the Talmidei Amagid, they have different drachim. Rabbi Melech and Nachman, all different drachim. Yeah. But they're all getting to the same place. They all want you to experience dvekus, translated full aliveness with everything in the Creator and creation at all times.
Gewaltig. Now, Moich Shalal Alev is not only when it comes to Averis, like you have to be like aware of.
Moich Shalal is for everything, right? Moich Shalal means whenever you find
whatever
yourself,
decisions you have to make,
Don't let your.
But you were saying that this is the nature. Is it the nature? Because I know a lot of people suffer from the opposite.
No, the nature is that you could. The nature is that you could do it.
You could do it. But
it's
most
possible.
people, the comfort
is
the lev.
Most people are reactive.
Reactive, yeah.
Most people are not proactive in life. And that's basically the difference between a person that's alive versus not. When you're reactive, then your emotions and your way of living is dependent on another person because I'm reactive to that other person. If I'm reactive to the weather, if I wake up in the morning and it's raining and I feel bad because I feel it's going to be not a good day, I'm reacting to the weather. So who chose the day? The weather. Right. If I walk in the street and someone tells me, by the way, you look like a shalmazel, and I think that's true, I'm reactive. Proactive means I am choosing how I'm going to live. Right. There's nothing external about this. Right. It's a self-choice. Right. That's Moshiach, right? I have to proactively say, I don't care what's going on in this world. Actually, I'm going to choose. When a person wakes up in the morning and says, right. What they're really doing is a proactive state. Right. They're saying, I am grateful for you giving me my soul, which means I am a thankful being. Right. Right now. Right. Forget what's going to happen throughout the day. That's who I am. What's going to be is going to be later, but I'm proactively choosing to give gratitude, to be thankful.
Yeah. Now back to the Gilgilim that we spoke about before. Yeah. How do you explain, in a very short version, what's we're coming down again, and very little neshumas are new.
There's no short version
for
this, but I'll try to give you the cliff notes of this topic. It's the reason I wrote a whole book called Shara Gilgulim on this topic.
Right. And how are we supposed to look at it? Are we supposed to be in tuned in that too?
No.
This should be part of our lives every day?
No, not really. Not really.
It gives us a little bit liberty. It gives us a little liberation of,
I'll tell you how it works, and then we'll get into what you need. In a very, very quick, I don't know if I can do this quick, but as short as I can do. There's basically something that's called Adam Kadmon. So Adam Kadmon is the primordial source of all neshamas. Every neshama is rooted in Adam Kadmon. Okay.
What is it?
Adam Kadmon.
Kadmon. Okay.
Like that's primordial Adam. Right. Yeah. So when it speaks about the creation story, right? So it says it was Adam and Chava. And then all humans come from this being. So it's already a medrash actually, but the Zohar talks about it great at length, that all neshamas are rooted in Adam Kadmon. Okay. Then there's a Surah Adam. Remember we talked about this, the form of the human being. The form of the human being has 613 parts. Taryag, there's Shasa, there's Ramach. That's so the form of the body is there's 613 parts. Okay, that's the form. And the body, there's parts that connect to the head, the feet, legs, right? The different parts of the body, right? Okay. Every neshama, every neshama is rooted in one of these taryag points. So let's say there's a neshama that comes from the right hand of Adam, and the neshama comes from the left foot of Adam, and the neshama comes from the right brain of the hemisphere of the brain of Adam. This neshama comes from the right hand of Adam. Let's say, for example, comes down to person number 1. Let's call him Chaim.
Yeah.
What does it mean he has the right hand? He only has the neshama that's only.
Yeah. What kind of personality is that?
So this personality means he has everything. He has intelligence that comes from the moyach. He has a heart that comes from the lev. He can walk, it comes from the hand. But he's connected to the right hand, which means predominantly his nature is, proclivities and his inclinations are, he's a very giving person. He's naturally a giving person. Yeah. He's a faginer. He likes to give. He's a chesed. This is the person.
That makes the choice which neshama goes.
1 second. You're asking a second question. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay.
The neshama comes down, and he comes down to the person number 1, Chaim. Chaim naturally is born into an environment that will be conducive, will be to allow for this Chaim to be given, which means he'll probably be born into a wealthier family, they have more means, and he's a chesed, or not, but he'll be a person of chesed. His tikkun of his neshama, his way of his neshama is that he has to articulate chesadim. That's his tikkun, his tafkid. But he also has to work on the flip side of that, which is that he struggles with boundaries and gvura and discipline because he's a chesadim. He wants to give, and he doesn't know. His kids are running all over the place. He doesn't know what to tell him anything. His tikkun is the flip side of the positive. The positive
work against his grain.
So it's 2. For the positive, he has to work to articulate it.
Whatever he wants, and he also has a job to work against
his grain. That's the negative side of that positive virtue.
Correct.
That's his tikkun. He does it. Let's say he does his work perfectly. Amazing. He did it. He was mamash a gevaldik yid, a tzaddik. He lived his life perfectly. This neshama, when it comes back after Mei Vasim, returns back into the hand. This spark returns back into the hand of Adam. That's where it gets lodged back into its space. So there's like this big tsuras Adam, the Chet Eitzadas pixelates it into a bunch of little puzzles. Right. We took the right piece, put it into the neshama goes back to the right hand, and we're recreating the body of Adam.
Wow.
Now, this right person was Isha Ches, was beautiful, and it was a Gvaldik
did his job,
did his job for Chesadim. The problem is that in every taryag, this is a metaphor. In every taryag, there's more than 630 people, right?
Right.
Eden, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it means in every taryag, there's taryag. There's taryag within the taryag within the taryag. It's a multiple system. So let's imagine this guy did the chesed of the taryag of this right hand of Adam. This neshama will break itself into 2 now. The part that was this person, this individual person,
stays there.
Stays in Gan Eden.
Wow.
That's where you can say Kaddish for this person, and the person doesn't come back and doesn't reincarnate. It's not Megalgal, ever. What comes back is the parts of self that were never articulated. Wow. They come back at the person number 2. This guy works on the Gvur of Chesed. This guy has to work more discipline. He has to work on the Chesadim. You understand? Right. Each life, another part, and then the souls go back and return back.
So you would call it as a punishment?
So it's not a punishment at all.
Not a punishment.
Not a punishment at all.
No, because someone says if you're not
one second. So that's not a punishment. That's the average incarnation. So you ask, what's my tikkun? What do I know my tikkun is? Very simply, do a cheshbon nefesh. See what makes you alive in this world. What gives you chayas? That's your tikkun. And see, because of this chayas, I also suffer from the opposite side of that. The struggle is on the other side. That's my tikkun, to work on those things. To articulate the best perfection of who I am positively, and to overcome those negative things.
That's a busy life.
Yeah, that's life. Yeah, that's my life. And it doesn't mean you're going to get 100%. Hopefully we'll get good percentage.
Again, you have to examine your
self-examination.
Really evaluate yourself from both sides.
Yes, correct.
So when you see personalities on the street, you see that this person is this type of personality, and he has this, and he has to work on this.
Yeah, and every person has to do a cheshbon nefesh to make sure they understand what my purpose is. How am I articulating, and how do I make this my life? Right. You're podcasting. Yeah. Obviously, you like talking to people, and you made it your life. Right. That's a perfect articulation of your talents, of what you're good at and what you want to do in this world, make it your existence.
Right.
That's the positive. Probably something negative. You have to work on
Right. You have to work on it.
Exactly. So that's the positive. That's nothing to do with punishment.
It's not a
It's
punishment.
not a punishment. Now, when we talk about punishments, it's a different thing. It's a different type of gilgul. If this Chaim came down into this world that was Chesadim and didn't do anything,
Not positive and not on the
no,
negative.
he didn't perfect
Lived
himself.
his life.
He lived his life mediocre. Didn't really do what he really had to be doing. He didn't articulate himself. Never
What if
worked
Chaz
himself.
Shulam that he
Worse.
was boiche bara?
Yeah, that's for sure. Right.
Can also do that.
Kabbalah. So then he comes back to 120. He can't put it back. He can't deposit him back into the Adam Kadmon. He can't be put back to the puzzle. Then that entire neshama, with the person's memory, which is very unusual,
What do you mean with the memory?
I'll explain you, will enter into another form of life. So it can either enter into vegetation or into an animal or to a stone. It can enter into another
But
form of
not a
life.
human being?
Also possible into another human being. But that's unusual. It's very unusual.
Uh-huh. So that means a person who's alive now can't say that I don't remember my previous life. It's not a human. You're saying you go into
The reason why you don't remember your previous life,
Yeah.
because your previous life is in Gan Eden. you're
Correct.
right? And the reason why animals sometimes express, it's very hard to say this, but it's possible that animals express some type of human kind of characteristics. There are some, I guess, a whole thing about this, whether it's true or not. But
What kind of animals? I mean,
anything, any animal. In other words, a person's soul could be trapped. This is one of the reasons why we eat fish. Tzaddikim eat fish, or Shabbos eat
because
fish.
of Gilgulim.
Gulim.
Right?
This is tzaddikim that are perfect. They did their perfect thing. They can't yet be published in Gan Eden, in the Adam Kadmon. They can't go to Gehenna because they didn't do anything really wrong.
Right.
So they come there for a short period of time. They hang out with the fish. The fish has their own consciousness. They don't become the fish doesn't start talking and so it's like the Vartoiros. There's another, but the soul is attached to that fish, and then the soul reaches the tikkun, and then it goes back in. But that's the general two forms. And then you ask the question.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's a huge topic. The second question you ask is who chooses, and that's kind of an interesting question because the Chesed Avram, this when Avram was alive, the Zayda of the Chidar writes that it's the only place that's written that the neshama chooses, and everywhere else places that Hashem chooses. And l'chur, it's not a steer. Why is it not a steer? Because if this neshama did chesed in this world, the neshama now needs to come down to do gvur in this world.
Right.
So who chooses it? Hashem chooses it, or the neshama? The neshama is one with Hashem. The neshama knows that in order for me to be in this world the correct way, I need to be in this person. I need to go into that family. If those own challenges and this family with the own drama that they have, I need to be dafka there, and there I'm going to reach my tikkun. So neshama chooses. When a person says I have issues with my parents and my siblings and things like that, you should know that before 120, before you came into this world, you made the choice.
Yeah.
You said for my tikkun to reach this in this world, I need
So
to
that
be.
means every person knew what he is going to go through
Correct.
in this world. And
Well,
he
not the
said
details,
yes.
right? Not the details. You don't know how it's going to live out, but I know
Right.
this is going to be my body. This is going to be the context.
Right.
The context of my life I chose. I know exactly what's going to be here. That's going to be the best way for me to reach my tikkun is to be in this situation, this time period, in this family, in this community, in this situation. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you the version that you can explain about, it's a famous tzaddik, v'raloi, and rusha v'toivloi.
Yeah.
Where does that tie into this whole, not Gilgilim, more of, how should a person look at it? A person, the rusha v'toivloi, everybody understands pretty good. It's not so complicated.
Right.
But what's with the tzaddik v'raloi, which means that he really wants to do the right thing, and he works on himself, and he does. And, we understand, I know you talk about it a lot. I saw one of your things talking about time and space, that the Rebbeinu Shalom is man, and this doesn't exist. We can't watch. When is this going to happen? He's davening and davening and davening. No, when is this going to happen? So the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't operate in time and space. But what does a person need to do when he's supposedly doing the right thing, and he doesn't have nachas, he doesn't have panusa, and he's like it's a tzaddik v'raloi.
You mean a tzaddik v'raloi classic with the Gemara is a tzaddik v'raloi? I mean that it's bad. He's not getting.
He's in bad shape.
He's in bad shape.
I mean, there's no arguing.
Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Shaila. This is one of the questions that Moshe Rabbeinu asked and was not answered. So
why things happen?
Yeah, why the good people suffer?
Right.
But and I'm not going to pretend to answer the question, but I would say like this.
I know the Chav Savuvas dives into this like in
right, but I It's complicated, but I would say
like
this.
Rav Zisha, the story of Rav Zisha,
Right.
that he doesn't know what Ra is.
Exactly.
So if you're at that level, then this question is not a question.
Exactly. And I would say even more that once you get to the point of Rebzisha, then you actually start getting,
You start living.
then you start getting actually physical. Then you start actually getting good things. In other words,
Right. The
moment you
toys
stop
starts
hearing,
to kick in, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The reason why sometimes, I will forget about the tzaddik. I'm not gonna. But the reason why sometimes we don't achieve what we were trying to achieve, we're not getting there, is because we're chasing it.
Right.
The chasing it itself is what's pushing it away.
Yeah, we're chasing.
We're forcing things. Sometimes you just have to drop into it, and to drop into it, you have to stop chasing it. So I have to work on myself, and I have to make a shtadlus, and I have to work on everything. But the chasing of it, I'll give you there's a funny way of thinking about this. Everything has its tzotzes, right? Everything has sparks.
What does that mean? This is also one of my major questions. Sparks flying. What is that?
It goes back to the same thing in reincarnation, which means that everything that happens in the physical world is representative of a spiritual reality that's happening, which means nothing is coincidence. Everything is b'hashgacha. So what does it mean, everything is b'hashgacha? It means that if I am meeting you, or if I'm walking down the street, there's some type of spiritual elevation that has to happen. Yeah. That's netzotzes. Netzotzes means there's light, there's redemption, there's hope in every possible encounter. Everything has. And why am I encountering these things and other person the other? Because that's the netzotzes that are connected to me. That's the netzotzes that are connected to you. Why do you have this amount of money? This person has this amount. Why this is your family? This is my family. Because everyone has their sparks, which means that they have things that are connected to them, and there's a possibility to release this positivity in this encounter, this holiness in this encounter, this kedusha in this encounter.
Right.
That's the over. That's the tzotzes.
Okay.
So, in theory, then if let's say it's a watch. Let's say a person wants a watch. I mean, it's like more like 19th century. People don't want watches anymore, but let's say that's the thing. Yeah, a person wants a watch. There's netzotzes. I feel a strong draw to that watch because there's something has to be elevated in the process of me holding this watch, or a car, or a house, whatever. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
Now, if we resonate together, the sparks are resonating, which is my consciousness resonates with the consciousness of this watch, so to speak, right? So there's a resonance,
right.
And so there's an attraction. That's why I'm attracted. So why am I attracted to it, and it's not attracted to me? That could be a question, right?
Right.
Why do I have to chase it? Why doesn't it chase me?
Right.
Like if it's resonance and it's too. So the way it's explained, and it's kind of like a cutesy way, but it's actually there's depth to it, is that there's a certain pattern that you set. If I receive things, the tzaitzis in my life, the objects in my life, people in my life, parnas in my life, whatever I'm receiving, and I do it to release taka sparks, which means I use my money to give stock, and I use my money to live big, and I live my money to I don't know, to do kiddush Hashem, whatever I'm doing, but something bigger, larger, more, deeper, and that's the way I'm living my life. So the sparks are very attractive to me because I'm the right guy. I'm the person that's doing these things.
Right.
But if I'm a person that the moment I get something, I rather hoard it. I keep it for myself, and I have a new car. No one's going to drive it. The moment I do that, the sparks are suspicious of me. They're saying, I don't want this guy. This is not the person that I want to be attracted to. He's attracted to, but I'm running away. So it keeps it. So the more you live from a place of wholeness,
right,
and a place of fulfillment and a place of abundance, the more you actually attract things, because the more attractive you become.
Right.
I want to give you an example of this. Is also in relationships. I don't know if it's something again, but people that are desperate to get married are very unattractive.
Right.
No one wants to get married to someone that's desperate to get married.
Right.
A person says, I'm not desperate. I'm actually fine. I'm excellent, beautiful. I have a great life. Oh, that's very attractive to me.
Right.
It's the same thing with the sparks. You want to attract things in your life, feel complete. Hoidel Hashem, thank Hashem for everything you are. Be very grateful. Be very wholesome. Feel that your life is amazing.
So what you're saying, that's where the Ra is going to be diminished.
Yes.
You're not going to focus, your lens is not going to be focused on the Ra so much.
And then,
if you're going to...
When Abzisha said that he doesn't have Ra, then he receives whatever he needs.
Right.
Then they fed him,
Right. Yeah, that was the concept. Now, I know you talk a lot about Bechira. Tremendous topic.
Yeah.
The Rebbeinu Shalom, a person can be boicha betoiv, it can be boicha bara. The Rebbeinu Shalom is there while you choose. How do you connect that in the everyday life? And of course, there is such a thing as Shiva. After you are boicha bara.
You're asking very big questions. This is the It's like one of the major questions in Yiddishkeit.
Yeah. So simplify Bechira So a person who wants to understand what does it mean.
First,
because
I would say,
there's a shlucha prutis.
Okay,
There are a bunch.
First, let me say something about Bechir because it's very important.
Yeah.
So Rama famously classically says, the person has free choice. The way the Torah phrases, the Torah says,
Right.
which means I'm giving you good in life, but death and
Choose life.
So then there's no choice. Why does Abishai tell me it means that there's no choice? You just told me don't say what to choose. Tell me why are you telling me to choose?
Advice?
Could be, but it doesn't sound like an advice. So sounds like
do
this.
It.
Yeah, so then they don't have choice. And the answer, the deepest answer is, and listen to this, is that we can only choose life.
We have no other choice.
There is no other choice. The other choice is not to choose. In other words, I choose to be proactive, or I don't choose and I'm a reactive. My reactive is not a choice. My reactive means I'm not choosing. If I show up to life and there's reactive,
right,
I have no bechira.
You didn't choose.
You didn't choose it.
You just threw in the towel.
Exactly. So someone screams at you, you get angry. Was it your bechira? No, you're just reactive. There's no bechar to b'chaim. Bechar to b'chaim is you don't become angry. If I can choose to choose life, I'm always choosing. The choice of life is the only choice I really have. The opposite of choice is not choice in negative. The opposite of choice is no choice. I just give in the towel. I throw in the towel.
So how do you describe bechira?
So now you have the question of what is. So bechira is always mitoyev. Now the question is, and we'll talk about this in a second. But how does bechira really jive with? How does it come together with?
It's a beautiful concept. What you just said. There's no choice in choice.
Right.
There's no by not choosing.
By not choosing, you're throwing in the towel.
Yeah,
you're not choosing.
Yeah.
That negativity always comes from the absence of choice.
Correct.
Right. I'm choosing to be angry. I'm choosing to. What do you do? You choose to be angry. You were angry because someone made you angry.
Yeah.
You reacted. I'm choosing to hate. Hate is not a reaction. Hate is a reaction. It's not emotion. Right. I'm choosing, despite the fact that you did something bad to me, I'm going to be good.
Correct.
That's b'char. So now the question is, which is a very profound question. I don't know how long you have, but I'm going to try to explain this in the shortest possible way. Is that there's a famous question of the Rambam asked the question of Yidi and Bechir, right? Free choice and Hashem's knowing. And really, that's a pretty simple answer. The Rambam, not for the Rambam, because the Rambam has a different idea of what Yidi is, but for the simple answer would be, is that Hashem knows what you're going to do, like the Ravid says, like a stargazer or some fortune teller, or Hashem knows after you did it already because it's beyond time. This is a ways to understand it. Again, the Rambam who Amad V'Yidua is different, doesn't answer that question. But the real question becomes Hashkacha. Hashkacha Pratis, which is a chiddush of the Baal Shem Tov. Because before the Baal Shem Tov, before the revealing of Teres Baal Shem, there was Hashkacha Kalis, which is general. The context of life is chosen, but how you choose it? Like Hashem wants you to get to Eretz Yisrael, let's say. That's a kavanah.
General.
That's general. How are you going to get there? You take a plane, take a car? That's your choice. The Baal Shem Tov came along and said, no. Hashkacha Pratis. Right. Hashkacha Pratis means that how are you going to choose it if you go by car or by plane? That's also Hashkacha. Sure. Which means that I have no free choice.
Yeah.
There's zero free choice. There's zeros. Everything is Hashkacha Pratis. So it's important. Baal Shem Tov didn't just reveal another idea. The Baal Shem Tov revealed this truth. And it became the truth. So it was a revealing of a new Gila Likus, which means before the Baal Shem Tov there was no Hashkacha Pratis on a very high level. The Baal Shem Tov revealed Hashkacha Pratis everything.
It wasn't there, or nobody saw it?
No, it wasn't there.
It wasn't there.
That's what I think. Wow. It wasn't there. That's why the Rambam would say there's no Hashkacha Pratis. But the Rambam didn't understand Baal Shem Tov. No, Baal Shem Tov, it was a higher. The reason why it was a higher revealing, it was a new truth, because as we're getting closer to Moshiach. Which is the ultimate, everything we revealed as Rokal Basa Yachta, everything we revealed as a Likus, as a divinity. Right. So there's more Hashkacha. Not only Hashkacha Pratis, but it's Metzias a Likus. It's only a Likus. Right. So the more we're getting to Metzias a Likus, to recognize that, there's more Hashkacha is being revealed. Right. So Hashkacha Pratis is part of Mashiach. The Hashkacha Pratis is part of Revelation Mashiach. That's one Torah.
Wow.
Now, I'm going to say also an opposite thought, a paradoxical opposite thought. As time progresses, from the beginning of time, the Beis Yaakov, the Ishbitzer writes, and others write it, as time progresses from the beginning of time, more bechira is available, not less. Because in the beginning of time, this is why the Torah there's less bechira according to the Moshiach and many of the things. In the beginning of time, there's less bechira. Why? Because there's the echo from the Creator in creation. So once in the beginning of time, when the Creator's light is still echoing through the beginning of the creation, man doesn't have independence, and existence is not an independent thing. So there's no bechira. There's less bechira. As the voice of creation becomes dim, because we're getting further away from creation, further away, the more Bechira starts arising, the more sense of independence starts arising.
Right.
And that's why, fascinatingly, if you look at history, all the movements, I don't want to get into a big schematic thing of history, but all ancient civilizations, and the Indo-Europeans, all the ancient civilizations, they functioned as klal, as a collective. There was no individuality. Mm-hmm. It's only in the last few thousand years that there was an emergence of individuality. It's partially because of the Torah, but it's the emergence of individuality. If you come to the modern era, which is like the last from the Enlightenment period and forward, all the great revolutions that happened in the world were all about liberty, freedom, individuality, democracy, representative. This is all about why did it come to this world now? Why in the first thousands of years was monarchy?
We're saying because we are further away.
Exactly. So the more further away, the more bechira is more individual.
Right.
So here you have two phenomena that are paradoxical happening at the same time. Yeah. There's more Ashgacha being revealed, and there's more Bechira being revealed. Right. Which one is it? And the answer is simultaneously both. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it can only be revealed now is because now we're equipped to understand paradox. If you lived in, scientifically speaking, like a very simple scientific, in Newton, like an older universe before the 1900s, before the 20th century, from the beginning of the 1900s, before quantum mechanics, I'm not going to get into that because that's for your suga, for your chevra. But before, it used to be an absolute understanding of the universe. Time was real, space was real, and it's immovable, and there's no improbabilities. Everything's predicted, everything's solid. If you're a scientist that lived in the 1800s, you can say, I can predict the end of time. Came to the 1900s, and this whole thing was upended by Einstein. A lot of scientists came along, and they upended this entire structure, which is time is not absolute and space is not absolute. And quantum mechanics means that there's both things are both a wave and a particle simultaneously, and there's Schrodinger cat. And there's many different scientific revolutions that happened that allowed for the emergence of modern man. Modern man, not the Chassidish guy, but the modern man thinks in paradox, because they know that the binary system of opposites don't work anymore, because things actually collide and become one. This is Galus Lakus. This is part of the Isgal. This is part of the revelation. The Galus Lakus on a super high level becomes revealed in science, because it's all part of the same system. It has to articulate in the world of science. But in the world of Isgalus Lakus, how does it show up? Hashgacha Pratis and Bechira both simultaneously being revealed at the same time.
That's crazy.
How does it answer the question? It doesn't, because logic cannot answer that question, because it's paradox. But they're both simultaneously true, and we have to live that way. That's the short answer.
That's the short answer.
That's the short answer. Now, what does it mean to live this way? Because live this way means, and it's important, living this way means, in practical life, because we're binary, we have separation. Havdalah, this is the way our das works. We just have to make Havdalah to make sense out of this. So we'll say like this. There's past and present. Everything I'm doing right now, I have agency, free choice. I can choose life. I can make a choice. Everything that I chose already in past tense is absolutely Hashgacha Pratis.
It was meant to be.
Meant to be. It was destiny. It was exactly what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Abishah wanted this to happen, and that's why it happened.
So let's say Hitler.
Wait a second. I wanted to go to the question of tshuva.
Okay, go ahead.
So the highest level of tshuva, Rav Pinson once said, the highest madrega of tshuva is to reach a level of tshuva that you don't have to do tshuva anymore.
What is that? Elaborate on that.
What does that mean? I take full responsibility for things for what I've done, because I own it, because I created it. And then I recognize that everything that I've done was exactly the way it should have been done. Exactly. But the only way I can do that is I first have to own it. I can't say everything I've done, I slapped you. Exactly. I slapped you. I did Avera. They just wanted Teshuva.
But to the level to understand that even this, the Rebbe was standing right there. And
that was Ratzon Hashem. That was Ratzon Hashem. Dafke. The Eibusher wanted you to fall. Shavi B'Tzadim come. The Eibusher wanted you to fall. That was the Ratzon Hashem to fall.
Wow.
You know, there's a gewaldige word from Torah Baal Shem, which is I don't know why people don't know this, but it's a chiddush nifla. Most people think that they fall because they have a Yetzer Hara.
Right.
Baal Shem flips it on his head.
What does he say?
He says you have a Yetzer Hara, so you should fall.
That Rebbe Shem created the Yetzer Hara, so you should fall and then get up.
That's correct.
And that brings you closer.
That brings you deeper.
Otherwise, there's no game.
Correct. In other words, the whole structure.
Throw in the ball.
The structure was not, I fell because of the Yetzer Hara. No, they should create the Yetzer Hara, so you should fall.
You should fall and get up.
Shavi
connect again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole kunst is how you get up in life. Not that you fall. You fall, everyone falls. The tzaddik is the one that has become. How do you get up in life? Do you get up? Do you own it? And then you can get up and say, that's the and I can live.
So the way to look at the Holocaust is that Hitler was Borcha Bara. Clearly, he had a choice, and he could have built the entire thing instead of he destroyed it, right? But after it was done, that was the Ratzon Hashem.
Two things. He wasn't boicha b'raya, he was reactive.
It was actually
he's reactive, right?
Back to what we just
right,
said.
yeah. He had hate because he had hate. And it was reaction.
Right.
And that's all very low-level conscious people that react to it. Okay. But in retrospect, it's very dangerous to say. It's dangerous theology, right? Because when a person goes through pain,
right, they don't.
The worst thing you can tell them
was the Rutz Hashem.
You never tell anyone.
They don't want to hear it.
No, the Rutz Hashem is for your own problems.
Right.
When you go to the person's availance, don't tell us David
Yeah.
Rutz Hashem. Never say that. You're an idiot. I'm sorry to say that.
Right.
I don't care if you're the biggest tzaddik here. You're
Right.
not smart.
You don't say it.
You don't say that.
Right.
But that's the truth. But the only way to say that is after the fact.
Of course.
In other words, if I think we're still in the post-traumatic era. From
we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. And 50 years from now, Be'ez Hashem, so Moshiach will be already, and the generation will be passed. We can say Tach v'Tat, Ratzon Hashem, the Chum Rabbis, Ratzon Hashem, for sure. We can see this, and we can actually see what emerged, what the light.
Right.
The Maral has a whole arichas in this. He talks about he talks about that in order for a higher light to emerge, the lower thing has to be destroyed.
Right.
You can't create something if you're trying to that's like in life. Like if I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to grow from the place that I am, and I'm not letting go of things. So then you're just schlepping along the things. Yeah. The way to do is you have to do a radical break, and you have to uncut yourself from that thing that's holding you down. Then you can create something new. So the churban is actually the root of Moshiach. The churban is what gives light, but birth to Moshiach.
It
light
brings you closer. Every break
brings to a higher place.
Brings you to a higher place.
Correct.
Now, talking about Mashiach, what is Mashiach? How is this? How are we gonna? Is the world gonna be at the same level that it is right now? And Mashiach is just gonna. Who is Moshiach? How is Moshiach? Well, how is he going to change our lives? Are we going to just be someplace else? Olam haba.
Okay, first of all, let's start off. Like the Rambam writes famously that we don't know exactly what's a mashal, what's real, what's exactly. That's the Rambam. That's his premise in Hilchos Malachim.
So how are we supposed to think about it?
So you have to think about Mashiach. Karva nafshi golan. Baal Shem writes Karva nafshi golan means Mashiach haprati. Mashiach haprati means that every person has a redemption consciousness, a consciousness that is not broken, that is not coming from a place of lack, that is not looking for a future, that is present right now, right here in full. That's the Mashiach Shebekir B'cha. That's the Yichidah Shemanafesh. That's the Mara Naim says.
What's the Taich of Mashiach?
That's the Mashiach. The Mashiach means the
Oisleiser, right?
Yeah, I mean that's simple.
That's what it means. What is the Taj of the Mashiach?
No, literally it means the anointed one.
Uh-huh.
It means the anointed, someone that's anointed with oil. But it means this idea of the Mashiach a prati, kover nafshi gola, and why a person should mavakish the Mashiach.
Right.
Is sometimes maybe when your child is getting married, or when you're davening, or maybe Yom Kippur, or maybe Purim. Sometimes there's a person that can think about their life. There was sometimes in their life that for a few moments you felt like the world is perfect.
Yeah.
That everything in your life is exactly the way it has to be. You know exactly why you married this person, and these are your children, and this
makes sense to you.
Everything is sense, but not sense like in a logical way.
Yeah.
Everything makes sense. That's the Mashiach HaPrati. Mashiach HaPrati is when that Geula pratis. We talk about Mashiach HaKlali, is when the world will reach a consciousness.
Everybody collectively
will be in that state.
We'll see that a bunch of them is in charge.
Everything. Perfect. Exactly. This is the Kavanah Yoina. I get it. It makes sense. And it's exactly the way it should be. How it's going to live out in the Pratim.
Exactly. We don't know.
We'll figure that out.
And this is, and they say not to use Mashiach because you want to get out of your tzuris, right? Is that fair to say? Because some people say, "Oh, Mashiach can shenkimen," you know.
No, usually that type of Mashiach that you're talking about
is just to get you out of the.
Yeah, it's also a binary system. You see, Mashiach is not binary. It's not an answer to a question, because if it's an answer to a question, then there's going to be another question tomorrow.
Right.
You have to get out of the binary, out of a question and answer.
Right.
Mashiach is, the 5 daggers in the soul. There's five levels in the soul.
Right.
Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida.
Yeah.
So Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya is in the binary system because it's opposites. So you'll have one, another.
Yeah.
Okay? They're daggers. The 5th level is not in the binary. It's not. It's an odd number. That represents something that's beyond. Because every time I'm looking for a geula, even a geula pratis,
right?
That's only a geula pratis that's going to answer a question that I have. That's not real geula.
Right.
It's a geula. It's a
you want it to be for eternity.
You want eternity. Exactly. You want to live in that place.
Right.
You want to say,
right.
I have tzaras, And then we're going to be because and then what happens if you don't have tzaras, or if the tzaras, a new tzaras come?
Right.
Okay, no, we want to be in a place that there's no, we're not equipped to actually think this way in a real way, because we think that tension brings growth, right? And it does, right? Like we say in our lives, what forces us to get out of our comfort zone is tension. Like a question forces an answer. If I'm comfortable, I don't have questions. I'll never look for questions. I'll never have the deeper answer in my life.
Right.
But the question is the burning desire for me to create a question. So tension creates. But what happens if there's a flip side of another way of living, which Chazal call Yom L'Shem L'Chefetz, this time without desire, which is Moshiach. I don't know what that means. I can get a glimpse of that maybe when I'm davening or some type of moment that I have that. But there's another way. There's another paradigm, another way of being, which is not about opposites. It's just about Shein L'Chefetz. I have no desire for anything. I'm here. I don't need anything to go, to be, to do.
Now, how does a person live his life with the Ge'ila Prutis? Like, what are the key steps if a person wants to live this, find his own Moshiach in himself?
This is part of the paradox. You're there already. If I search for it, I'm never going to find it, because then I'm not it.
Right. So
if I'm
saying, live in the present moment,
just drop into it.
Just accept, surrender.
Surrender in the present moment that you are. The moment you're just going to say, I don't want it.
That's Ge'ila Prutis.
That's the Ge'ila Prutis.
That's the secret.
Yeah. Because if I'm looking for it, it'll never come. That's because that's the definition of
chasing it.
Exactly, we're chasing it, it's running away. So the real thing is to open ourselves up. And I say, just to make this more practical, like what the Ge'ula Prutis is, take experience that you have already in your life that are geuladik. Let's say you enjoy nigunim or davening or learning, or being with your family. Take things that have a trace of this geula thing and try to do it a little bit deeper. To letting go of mamash being there, and you're experiencing.
It's beautiful because it is in you. The Ge'ila Prutis is here. They don't have to run. No. And there's no. It's not in a safe deposit box. No, it's right here.
Right. It has to.
Yeah. Right.
You know, the Baruch HaMezir was once said that 3 things he learned when he got older. And one of the things that he learned, he says, I learned when I got older, is that whenever I do something wrong, whatever on that level was, I do tshuva, I forget about it the rest of my life. Because when I was younger, I thought I have to do tshuva and tshuva and tshuva. But he says, I do something, I move on.
Forget about it. That's the whole.
Forget about it. Move on.
Move on. Don't
take
look
responsibility.
Back.
Don't look back. Take responsibility. Own it. And then say it's Hashkacha Pratis. This is Ratzon Hashem. That's what I have to be. That's what I have to do. And now I'm Oivad Hashem and I'm doing Hashem's work.
I had somebody once ask me a question. How do I know what my shlichus is? Like you have your mission in life, and this is your shlichus. Yeah. You're talking and you're giving shirim. You have this. You're doing tremendous things. People find their shlichus. Yeah. You can see it. But what's a good eitzah for somebody who says, you know what, I want to find my own. I have a 9 to 5. I go to work every day. I don't feel it.
It's an excellent question. I think it goes back to a little bit we spoke about before, which is part of your tikkun. Your shlichus is part of your tikkun. So a person has to do a cheshbon nefesh. The Zohar HaKadosh is a person to do a cheshbon nefesh at least once a week on Thursday night. Wow. Go through your week. Write down. You'll be surprised, but don't think I'm going to write down write down the things throughout the week or by day. What are the highlights? When did I feel most alive? I felt alive. I felt chayas. I felt aliveness.
Where were you pulled to?
Yeah, where were you pulled? Where did I feel the chayas?
Where do you feel it?
Do this for 3-4 weeks. I promise you.
It's going to come to you.
You're going to see these are the things I'm doing. I never thought this. I never knew I'm good with people. I should really be being a therapist.
Right.
I never thought I'm good with people.
Right.
All of a sudden, that's what gave me chayas. Not making money or doing this.
Right.
Or maybe making money, doing deals.
But whatever the case is, pursue it.
Pursue
it and don't think what other people have to say.
Correct.
And just
that's your Zohar Tzvei. That's your particular mitzvah you have to do. That's your.
Now we have a final question for you. And this is a personal one.
Yes.
Since you're like accomplished, who am I to say what kind of accomplishments you have and what kind of Talmud Chacham? Who is your role model?
My role, the Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe.
How? In which way did he make an impact that we see what we see now?
I hope my life is a reflection of the Rebbe.
Gewaldig.
The Rebbe,
but you can say that
the Rebbe was. That was the Rebbe, but my understanding is, the Rebbe was a person that had the highest level of kedusha, but the highest level of integration in the world. You know, he was able to be on the highest level of where he was, but to be grounded with his feet on the ground, and not to live with Achdus, to live with the idea of Achdus and Klal Yisrael, but Achdus in the world, to see the unity of everything.
He saw the world from a different lens.
He looked at the world through Moshiach. He looked at the world through Moshiach. There's no question.
I always say this: the way he created leaders, and you're part of it. And I said it to all the Chabad Chevra who I speak to. What he created, you don't see in the world. Because he created something, a person like you, who should sit and learn and publish your things and online and whatever you do, and just share this with the world with such confidence and with such a true role model.
But the rebels should be a role model to all of Klal Yisrael.
Amazing stuff. I want to really thank you for coming in and giving me this time out of your busy day.
My pleasure.
And I want to thank you. I want to thank you, whoever's going to listen to this, sharing your wisdom with the world. This is giving. This is a gift that you give to the world, and you don't hold it by yourself.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.